Hi, Holly. I've looked over your lesson plans and here's my feedback. I really so this first lesson plan, right? And I saw your note that you've included two in here. Working on setting tone and mood. And I really like your essential questions. So how does the environment we're in shape our actions and identities? And if that's a piece that you're continuing through into the trial, then looking at the world that people have around them and being able to tie that into the kids and the world around them, right? I mean, living in Greeley, Colorado has a certain look, a certain feel, a certain mood and tone, much different than when I was living in Huntington Beach, California, or even, Parkersburg, West Virginia. So I really like that essential question. I hope that's something as you go through your unit that you can touch back to really help bring the characters to life and help the students understand that the literature is really this opportunity for imaginative practice, as they look at their own worlds. So first, I love the idea of the court trial, of course, right? We've talked about that so much before, but I really like your idea of the butcher paper and recreating. So the fluency in the lesson plan is very good, right? Reading the direct instruction, reading the piece to them and then saying, okay, we're going to explore the scene. Here's the things that we're looking for. Practice it in something very easy. I'm a big fan of using children's lit for that initial practice because it's just so much easier to understand. It's so much more accessible and in your face, right? And so practice on something really easy like that. So I really like that kind of a flow. And then I'm really glad you came back to, okay, let's read this passage one more time, pick out a mood or tone, and then, bringing artwork into class. I don't know, I'm sure you've heard, STEM is the big thing, right? Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. But a lot of the big pushes that have been happening are now called STEAM. So they're adding the A or adding arts integration. So talking to the kids about using their artistic skills to access content, right? So having a butcher paper where we're using our artistic skills throughout the entire piece. And some of your questions too, I really liked it. How can we make the river seem calm? Or how can we make these trees seem light? Talking to the kids about using color and using different images and different textures and different sizes, scenery to setting to, details, all these different pieces. And I think that's really valuable. And so, if you just Google STEAM, it's an acronym, so capital STEAM, you might find some really interesting stuff about arts integration, and that would be, I'm always thinking about getting you guys jobs, so as you apply for jobs and interviews, to talk about how your awareness of how to integrate arts to practice application of ideas and texts and different things like that could be super valuable for you. Okay, so looking at the second lesson plan you included, which is like the final assessment for the piece, okay? Super cool idea. I really love this. Starting off with an expert witness, the police officer, and I think you're right, like having a uniformed police officer in class is kind of hook enough, and I'm really glad to see things, you say things like, we'll have gone over rules and expectations, so as you continue through the semester and you're planning this, planning out this entire unit, make sure that you include a lesson plan where I can read that you have explicitly done these pieces, whether it's a handout or a PowerPoint presentation or something like that, and then align that to those oral expression and listening standards. Okay, police officer, obviously you've set it up in advance, had a lot of back and forth with him. And then let's look at the summative assessment. Okay, so I like how you have laid this all out, right? So it's in handout format to the students, and they know exactly what it is that they're supposed to be doing. On this part. So I love this stuff. This stuff's really great. 5-minute opening speech, final paper. Okay. So, I'll be curious to see the lesson plan, or probably 2 or even 3. This is a pretty extensive piece of writing that they'll be doing. So how are you going to scaffold them into this written essay, to respond, is Lenny guilty of murder? Use the evidence you've acquired from the text and outside sources. And I think, if I'm reading this right, I think that every individual is doing a final paper in which they take a stance on Lenny being guilty or not. And so talking to them about how to properly integrate 4 explicit textual examples, how appropriately to integrate 4 explicit examples from outside sources, so that you're going over MLA and in-text citation, and hopefully, at least in my mind, I hear anything argumentative and I think Toolman, that you see a piece of data, an explicit example from source outside, and from that data you draw a claim, and then you explicitly state your warrant. So having a writing lesson specifically on Toolman will be good for that. And then I think, if I'm reading this appropriately, that actually is going to be separate and in addition to the trial, during which 2 kids are lawyers, 3 kids are witnesses, the rest of the people are the team of attorneys, and so you'll want to. So how do you walk them through straight persuasive writing, so that they are creating and scripting out and practicing on giving their opening and closing speeches, things like that. So we'll want to see those in a lesson plan. And then this is a piece that I feel like I really messed up when I did the trial with the Lord of the Flies, right? I had a defense team, I had a prosecution team, but I love what you have the jury doing. During the week of researching the time period in which the novel makes sense, so that you can really act like a person from that setting, from that time period. And so that in and of itself can be a little tricky. I'll be curious to see curious because I didn't do it and I don't feel like I did a good job at it. And so I love this, right? How do you scaffold the kids into that kind of research, right? Researching, different variations, different degrees of murder. And, is Lenny innocent or is he guilty? Well, he did X. Well, why did he do X? Things like that. But this is a very different kind of research to get yourself into the mindset of the time. It almost feels like it would be like reading some short stories, maybe reading some newspapers or magazines from the time. What are people talking about, looking at, thinking about? How are those things being talked about? Language usage, just different things like that. But how is it that you research culture? So I don't know. I mean, Holly, this is just fascinating. So I'll really be anxious to see this develop. And so I would assume that their paper, would be in addition to their final paper too. So I really like this. It's really good. And I'm glad you included this final summative assessment so that I can see where you're heading and watch those pieces come together and provide you with some feedback and hopefully some help or something like that. So really good job. I like it.